The night I saw him again, blood was still drying on his hands, and he smiled like he'd been waiting for me. Luciano Rossi, the man who once saved my life, now owned it. And when he whispered, "You'll be safe as long as you're mine," I realized safety was just another kind of prison. "Don't wait up for me, Clara," I said, sliding into my scuffed black heels. Clara raised a brow over her coffee mug. "You're going out now? Dressed like that? You look like someone walking into her own funeral." "Close enough," I muttered. "Interview at Rossi Imports." The mug froze halfway to her lips. "Rossi Imports? Emily, you can't. That's his company." I grabbed my purse, pretending not to hear. Rent was overdue, my fridge was empty, and desperation didn't care about history. 5 years ago, the name Rossi meant fear. The kind of fear that came with gunshots and blood in the street. But he wouldn't remember me. At least, that's what I told myself as I stepped out into the cold night. The next morning, the building towered over me like a glass cathedral, beautiful, heartless, and completely out of my league. Inside, the lobby was marble and mirrors. The kind of place where people spoke in whispers because money didn't need to shout. I approached the receptionist, clutching my resume like armor. She gave me a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Deliveries are through the back. I'm here for an interview." Her gaze swept over me, lingering on the scuffed heels. "For what?" "Personal maid." Before I could fire back, the elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and the air changed. Every sound in the room faded. Every breath caught. Out stepped him, tall, composed, the kind of man who could command a room with silence. Luciano Rossi, the devil of Naples, the man who once pulled me out of a gunfight only to whisper, "Next time, aim higher, Tesoro." He was the last ghost I ever wanted to see in daylight. And now he was walking straight toward me. "Emily," he said, his voice low, deliberate. Not a question, a memory. My pulse stuttered. "I think you've got the wrong person." He stopped close enough for me to smell danger, gunpowder, and cologne. "Don't lie to me. I never forget faces. Especially ones that ran from me." The receptionist's lips parted. The room's eyes turned to us. "I didn't run," I said quietly. "I escaped." His mouth curved into something between amusement and threat. "You always did have a talent for rewriting history." He stepped closer, adjusting the silk scarf around my neck. The motion soft but unmistakably controlling. His breath grazed my ear. "Welcome to my empire, Tesoro. You'll fit right in." The HR director stumbled out of the elevator, nearly tripping. "Mr. Rossi, we were just about to begin the interviews." Luciano didn't even look at him. "No need. I've already chosen." My stomach dropped. "Chosen?" He nodded toward me. "My new assistant." "What?" "No, wait. I came for the marketing role." He ignored me entirely. "Cancel the rest. She starts today." The receptionist's fake smile shattered into shock. I could feel every stare, cold, jealous, cutting. Luciano's eyes met mine. "My office. Now." As soon as the door clicked shut behind us, I spun on him. "You can't just decide where I work." "Can't I?" He poured himself a drink, the sound of ice echoing in the silence. "You owe me, sweetheart." "I don't owe you anything." He looked at me then, really looked, and the weight of it pinned me in place. "You owe me your life. I saved it once. I could take it just as easily." I swallowed hard. That was 5 years ago, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. He stepped forward until my back hit the glass wall. "Stay," he murmured. "You'll be safe here, as long as you're mine." His voice was too soft, too dangerous. My heart forgot how to beat. I should have run. I didn't. That night, I told myself I was just taking the job for the paycheck. But when his eyes found mine across the room, dark, unyielding, and almost aching, I realized something far worse. The devil didn't save me 5 years ago. He marked me. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. My body still remembered the chill of his office, the low hum of his voice, the weight of his stare. Rossi Imports looked different in daylight. No longer a temple of glass and marble, it felt like a fortress. I wasn't sure whether I was walking into work or stepping back into captivity. At the security gate, a guard with a Rossi crest on his sleeve checked my name, then handed me a sleek black badge. "Special clearance," he said. "Boss's orders." His tone told me he wasn't used to questioning those. Inside, every wall gleamed with quiet money. The air smelled faintly of cedar and power. As I crossed the lobby, I could feel people watching me, curiosity mixed with jealousy. No one smiled. When I reached the executive floor, a woman in an immaculate gray suit intercepted me. "Miss Carter," she asked without warmth. "Mr. Rossi requested that you use the private elevator." Private? Of course. The doors closed behind me with a whisper, sealing me inside a mirror box that climbed faster than my pulse. I could see my reflection in the polished steel, crisp blouse, pencil skirt, hair pulled back too tightly. I looked like a stranger pretending to be brave. Luciano's office was an empire of shadows and light. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline, and somewhere in the distance a storm was brewing. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, the city behind him. "You're early," he said without turning. "You told me to be on time." He glanced over his shoulder. "And you listened. Good. I like obedience." I folded my arms. "I like paychecks. We both have our motivations." That earned a low chuckle, the kind that vibrated more than it sounded. "You'll find your desk there." He gestured to a glass table near his. "Computer, phone, schedule. I expect you to know every meeting before I walk into it. You expect a lot. I reward performance." His tone made "reward" sound like both a promise and a warning. The morning blurred into silence and the faint click of his pen. He dictated emails, issued orders, never raising his voice, yet commanding absolute attention. I typed, scheduled, listened, and tried not to stare. At noon, his assistant Anna knocked. "Sir, the Mancini meeting is confirmed. Conference room 1. Mancini." The name scraped across my nerves. Luciano straightened his cuffs. "You're coming." I looked up from my screen. "Me? You're my assistant." He met my eyes. "You'll sit beside me, take notes, and learn who your enemies are." The conference room was colder than the rest of the floor. The table long enough to host a small war. Men in dark suits filled the seats. Tension filled everything else. Luciano entered last, the air shifting with him. I followed, clutching a tablet and pretending I belonged. One of the Mancini men, heavy-set, gold watch flashing, smirked as I sat down. "You brought decoration today, Rossi? I didn't know you were expanding into hospitality." The laughter that followed was short and mean. Luciano didn't laugh. He didn't even look up from his papers. "You'll address her properly," he said. "She doesn't seem to mind." The man's grin widened. "Do you, sweetheart?" Something in the room snapped invisible. Luciano lifted his gaze slowly. "Stand up." The man blinked. "What? Stand up." The Mancini rep rose, uncertain. In one fluid motion, Luciano slammed his pen down hard enough to crack the table's glass inlay. The sound silenced everything. "This meeting," he said evenly, "was about business, not the women who work for me." His eyes cut to the others. "Remember that." No one breathed. He turned to me then, voice soft. "Take note, Miss Carter. Disrespect has consequences." Back in his office, I set the tablet down harder than necessary. "You humiliated him." I warned him, and used me to do it. He leaned back in his chair, the picture of calm authority. "You think I planned his insult? You planned your response." A slow smile curved his mouth. "Of course. Every empire runs on strategy." I stared at him, anger and confusion tangling in my chest. "Do you always need to prove you own the room?" His eyes darkened. "No. Only when someone forgets whose room it is." I pushed away from the desk. "You don't own me, Mr. Rossi." He rose, closing the distance between us. The air thickened. "No," he said quietly. "But the world we live in will tear you apart if I don't draw the lines for you." "That's not protection," I whispered. "That's control." He reached past me, taking the empty glass from beside my hand, setting it down with deliberate care. "If I don't protect what's mine," he said, eyes locked on mine, "someone else will destroy it." For a moment, neither of us moved. The storm outside finally broke, rain streaking the windows like spilled ink. He stepped back first. "You can go home." I hesitated. "Just like that." He smiled faintly. "Tomorrow you'll understand the routine." As I left, I caught my reflection in the glass wall. Again, my expression halfway between fear and fascination. If you're vibing with this so far, tap that like button. It tells me to keep going with videos like this. That night, the city lights blurred through the rain as I rode home in the subway. Around me, people scrolled through their phones, laughed quietly, existed freely. I pressed my badge in my palm until the edges bit my skin. Freedom had never felt so complicated. Because for the first time, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to escape Luciano Rossi's world or understand it. The city never slept, not really. It just changed its mask. By the time the clock on my phone blinked 11:47 p.m., Rossi Imports was empty, except for me. Everyone had left hours ago. The building's hum had softened into silence. The kind that made you hear your heartbeat and wonder if it was too loud. Luciano had gone to a late meeting, which, judging from the tone his second-in-command used, probably meant someone wouldn't be leaving that meeting alive. I should have gone home. Instead, I sat at my desk, pretending to organize files while my curiosity gnawed at me like a secret with teeth. Something about today, the way he'd looked at me, when he said mine, had left an ache under my skin that wasn't just fear. It was recognition. I wanted answers. Not about the business, not about his empire. About why he looked at me like I was both a ghost and a promise. The office door to his private study was half closed. The lights inside were still on, throwing long amber streaks across the floor. I hesitated, my hand hovering at the edge of the door. "Don't do this, Emily," I whispered to myself. "You'll regret it." But regret was safer than ignorance. I slipped inside. Luciano's desk was immaculate, the kind of order that screamed control. Everything was aligned. Pen parallel to notepad, glass centered, documents stacked with surgical precision. Except one folder. It lay slightly off-center, half hidden beneath a ledger. My name was on the tab. My pulse spiked. I glanced toward the door, half expecting him to materialize behind me. Then I opened it. Inside were pages of typed reports, printed photos, and surveillance stills, some grainy, some painfully clear. One photo froze me completely. It was me. Me walking home from work 2 weeks ago, raincoat on, head down. Another, me and Clara in the cafe near my apartment. And another, me standing outside my old building, keys in hand. But the last photo wasn't recent. It was from 5 years ago. Flashback. Naples, 5 years earlier. The night smelled like gunpowder and rain. I'd been 17, stupid, and desperate. My mother was dying. Rent was due, and the only place still hiring was a bar that belonged to men people whispered about. I didn't know then that I was stepping into a war. The fight started outside. Shouts, screeching tires, then gunfire. One of the men dragged me down behind the counter as bottles shattered around us. When I looked up, the front door exploded inward. And there he was, Luciano Rossi. Even then, he carried himself like the storm belonged to him. A black coat, a gun in his hand, eyes that saw everything and forgave nothing. He shot a man who was reaching for me. No hesitation, no second glance. The sound was deafening, final. When it was over, I couldn't breathe. My ears rang. The floor smelled like smoke and blood. He crouched in front of me, hands steady despite the chaos. "You shouldn't be here," he'd said softly. "I work here," I choked out. "I didn't do anything." He smiled faintly. "That's what they all say." I tried to stand. He caught my wrist, not roughly, but firmly enough that I froze. "You just saw something you shouldn't have. That makes you valuable. Or vulnerable." His voice was low, measured, dangerous. Then he reached up and wiped a streak of blood from my cheek with his thumb. "You should have aimed higher," he murmured, before walking away into the smoke. I ran that night. Out of Naples, out of Italy. I never told anyone what happened, not even Clara. I built a new life, with new lies, and prayed the past wouldn't find me. Until it did. Until him. The sound of footsteps snapped me back to the present. I spun around. Luciano was standing in the doorway, his jacket off. Shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, tie loose. His expression unreadable, but his eyes were on the open file. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked softly. My throat closed. "What is this?" He stepped closer, the faint scent of smoke and whiskey filling the air. "Information. On me? You've been watching me." My voice shook. "For how long?" "Since the day you ran." Anger flared, sharp enough to drown my fear. "You had no right." "I had every right," he cut in. "You think you could just disappear after what happened? I was a kid. I didn't belong in your world." He came closer, his shadow stretching over the desk. "You belonged the moment you stepped into that bar. The moment you looked at me like I wasn't a monster." I swallowed hard. "You killed a man in front of me." He didn't deny it. "I saved you," he said simply. "Saved me?" I laughed bitterly. "From what? From living a normal life? From ever sleeping without seeing blood?" Something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or memory. He rested both hands on the desk, leaning in. "You were marked that night, Emily. Whether you liked it or not. Naples remembers its debts." I met his gaze, unflinching. And you? Do you? He hesitated, then said quietly, "Every second." The silence between us pulsed. The air felt charged, like lightning waiting for somewhere to strike. "You followed me," I said. "All these years. I needed to know if you survived, if the world hadn't chewed you up and spat you out, or if you'd broken the rules by letting a witness live." His jaw tightened. "Maybe both." My heart hammered. "Why me?" He studied me for a long time, then spoke in a voice that felt like confession. "Because I couldn't stop remembering the way you looked at me that night. Not with fear, at least not only fear. You looked at me like you saw something human in the devil. No one ever has." I didn't realize I'd stepped closer until I felt the heat radiating from him. His breath mingled with mine, his voice dropping low. I had to be sure the woman who haunted me was real. Something in me trembled, something I didn't want to name. For a heartbeat, there was nothing in the world but that space between us. The tension that neither of us could seem to break. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from my face. 5 years, and you still don't know what you do to me." I should have stepped back. Instead, I whispered, "You don't get to say that. Not after everything." "I don't get to want you either," he murmured. But here we are. Our eyes met, fire and defiance, and something too fragile to survive in this place. His hand lingered near my cheek, his thumb tracing the edge of my jaw as if mapping something he'd forgotten how to touch. Then, a knock shattered the moment. Luciano's hand dropped immediately. "What?" The door opened. It was Marco, his lieutenant, face tense. "Sir, we have a problem." Mancini's men, 2 of them were spotted near the docks. "They're moving fast." Luciano's expression turned to stone. "Get the cars ready. I'll handle it." Marco hesitated. "And her? She's coming with me," he said without looking at me. "What?" "No," I protested. "I'm not. You wanted to understand my world?" He grabbed his coat, already walking past. "Then you'll see what it costs to rule it." The rain outside was relentless, slashing against the pavement as black cars idled in front of the building. I slid into the back seat beside him, my pulse wild. The city lights streaked by like ghosts. "Where are we going?" I asked. "The docks," he said flatly. "Mancini wants a message delivered. I plan to send one back. And I'm supposed to just what? Watch you start another war." He turned to me, eyes burning. "You already live in one." I stared out the window, his words echoing in the dark. He wasn't wrong. The war had started long before tonight, before this city, before the blood. It had started the night a man with a gun had looked at a terrified girl and seen something worth remembering. And now, sitting beside him, I realized the most dangerous part wasn't that he'd marked me. It was that somewhere deep inside, I'd let him. By the time we reached the waterfront, thunder rolled overhead. Men waited in the shadows, his men, each one silent, watchful, armed. Luciano opened his door, pausing for a moment. "Stay in the car." I caught his arm. "Luciano, don't." He turned, surprise flickering across his face. "You've never said my name like that before. Just don't do anything you can't come back from." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "Too late for that, Tesoro." Then he was gone, swallowed by the rain and the dark. I watched him walk toward the docks, his figure outlined by lightning. Power. Control. A man sculpted by violence and haunted by what it had cost him. And for the first time, I saw the truth beneath the legend. Luciano Rossi wasn't just the devil of Naples. He was a man trying to convince himself he still needed to be. When he returned an hour later, his shirt was soaked, knuckles bleeding, expression unreadable. He slid into the seat beside me, silent. I didn't ask what happened. He didn't offer to explain. As the car pulled away, he leaned back and exhaled slowly. "You shouldn't have seen any of this," he murmured. "You should have stayed gone." I turned to him. "You're the one who found me." His eyes met mine. "And now I can't let you go." The car drove on through the rain, headlights cutting through the storm. 2 ghosts bound by a past that refused to die. The morning after the docks felt wrong before it even began. Luciano was already in his office when I arrived. Crisp suit, unreadable face, eyes darker than coffee. There was something colder about him today, as if he'd locked last night in a box and swallowed the key. "Sit," he said, without looking up from his papers. I stayed standing. "You shouldn't have brought me there." He glanced up, and the corner of his mouth twitched, not amusement, more like irritation wrapped in restraint. "And yet, you're still here." I didn't have much of a choice. "There's always a choice, Tesoro," he murmured, signing another document. Today, you'll make one. I frowned. What are you talking about? He closed the file, stood, and straightened his cufflinks, silver, sharp-edged, catching the light like small knives. You're coming with me. Lunch meeting. With who? The Mancinis. The name hit like ice water. The rival family. The same one whose men had been lurking by the docks last night. My pulse jumped. You're joking. Do I look like a man who jokes? No, I said. You look like a man who uses people. His expression didn't change. Good. Then you know what you're walking into. The restaurant was all glass and gold. Expensive enough that no one dared acknowledge. The tension simmering across the table. Luciano sat beside me, his presence a solid wall of authority and silent threat. Across from us sat two men in tailored suits, Rico Mancini, slick and smiling, and his cousin Vito, who looked like he'd never smiled in his life. Mr. Rossi, Rico greeted, his grin sharp as a blade. It's not often the devil joins us in daylight. Luciano smiled back, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. Even the devil needs to eat. The waiter poured wine. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for my glass, and that's when Rico noticed me. And who might this be? He asked, leaning forward. You've been hiding her from us. Luciano's tone was smooth. My assistant. Rico's eyes dragged over me, slow and invasive. Beautiful assistant. Luciano's fingers flexed once on the tablecloth. Eyes up, Mancini. Rico only smirked. Relax. I was just admiring your taste. You always did have an eye for rare things. I could feel the tension radiating off Luciano, a coiled danger that made the air hard to breathe. I wanted to leave. Every instinct screamed that I shouldn't be there, that I was sitting in the middle of a trap designed for me. Because that's exactly what it was. Luciano's gaze flicked toward Rico again, and I realized he was watching him watch me. Testing, measuring, using me to see which way the enemy leaned. And I hated him for it. When Rico's hand brushed my arm, light, almost mocking, something inside Luciano broke. The next second was chaos. Luciano stood, the chair crashing back, his hand already at his side. A gun appeared so fast I didn't see where it came from. He grabbed Rico by the collar and slammed him against the wall hard enough to shatter a picture frame. Wine spilled. People screamed. Touch her again, Luciano hissed, his voice low and venomous. And I'll make sure your family eats what's left of you. Rico's smirk faltered for the first time, eyes wide with something dangerously close to fear. Luciano, stop! I shouted, standing. My voice cracked through the chaos like a whip. For a heartbeat, he didn't move. His chest heaved, jaw tight. Then, slowly, he released the man, stepping back like he'd just remembered there were witnesses. He threw a wad of cash on the table and turned to me. We're leaving. The drive back was silent until I couldn't take it anymore. What the hell was that? You could have killed him. His hands gripped the steering wheel tight enough to whiten his knuckles. He touched you. He brushed my arm. You used me as bait, and then you lost control. Don't, he warned. Don't talk about control. I ignored him, fury burning through my fear. You dragged me into your war. You put me in danger, and now you're acting like. Like what? He slammed the car to a stop in front of the building, turning to face me fully. Like I care. The words hung between us, raw and unguarded. I swallowed hard. You don't get to care. You don't even know how. His voice dropped, quieter but heavier. You think I don't know? I'd burn this city before I let another man lay a hand on you. My breath caught. The fire in his eyes wasn't just rage. It was something else, something darker, desperate, terrifyingly human. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The city moved outside, horns, rain, sirens, but inside the car, the world narrowed to his gaze and my heartbeat. I didn't know whether to run or reach for him, because in that look, I saw the truth I'd been trying not to see. I wasn't his hostage. I was his weakness, and that was so much worse. The night exploded in gunfire. I was in the office when it happened, the sound of glass shattering, tires screeching, and the sharp echo of bullets slicing through the quiet. Luciano's men shouted orders, scattering toward the entrance. Someone grabbed me, shoving me behind a marble column. Stay down. But I didn't listen. I crawled to the window, just in time to see a black car, peeling off into the street, and Luciano, bleeding, half collapsed beside one of his men. Luciano, by the time they brought him upstairs, he was pale but furious, his white shirt soaked in red. The sight froze me. The devil of Naples was supposed to be untouchable, yet here he was, wounded, mortal, out. He barked, waving off the bodyguards. But sir, out. The men hesitated, then obeyed. And suddenly, it was just us. I rushed to his side. You need a hospital. I need silence, he muttered, gripping his side. It's just a graze. Graze? You're bleeding through a $5,000 shirt. He winced but smirked faintly. Then I should have bought a cheaper one. Luciano, I snapped. Take the damn shirt off. His eyes flicked up at me. Something dangerous, something that wasn't pain. For a moment, I forgot the blood, the gunfire, the danger, everything but the way he looked at me, like I was the only person who dared order him around. I grabbed the first aid kit from his drawer, hands trembling as I knelt before him. Hold still. He didn't. The fabric tore under my fingers, revealing skin marked with old scars and muscle tight from years of violence. But it wasn't the blood that stopped me. It was the tattoo, inked across his ribs, black and fierce. Per amore e per vendetta. For love and for revenge. My breath caught. That's poetic. He gave a humorless laugh. My father's idea of poetry. Every Rossi is branded with it. Love and revenge, the only two things that make a man dangerous. I pressed a cloth to his wound. He flinched, but didn't move away. You don't believe that? I used to. His voice softened, like the words cost him something. Until I realized neither one saves you. They only chain you. The vulnerability in his tone startled me. Luciano Rossi never let anyone see the cracks. Not in his empire, not in himself. But here, under the dim light of his penthouse, the mask had slipped. I wanted to ask why. Why someone like him, feared by half the city, sounded so tired. But instead, I said quietly, then why stay in it? Why keep ruling a world you hate? He looked at me for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. Because monsters don't get to walk away. Emily, someone has to keep the balance. And I was born with blood on my hands. You could stop. His laugh was soft, bitter. And do what? Open a cafe? Go fishing? Live, I whispered. Something shifted in his gaze, the danger easing, replaced by something raw and aching. You really think I could? He asked. I think you want to. Silence. Just his breathing, rough and uneven, and my pulse hammering in my ears. I reached for another cloth, brushing against his skin. His muscles tensed beneath my fingers. The air thickened, not with fear this time, but with something else. He caught my wrist. Careful, he murmured. I might start thinking you care. Maybe I do. That broke something between us. The silence wasn't safe anymore. It pulsed with everything unspoken, every argument, every stare that lingered too long. His hand slid to my jaw, slow, deliberate. My breath hitched as he leaned closer, close enough that I could feel the heat of him, the faint tremor in his breath. Luciano. His lips were inches from mine when he stopped. His expression twisted, like the war inside him had turned violent. He exhaled, shaking his head. You deserve a world I can't give you. The words cut deeper than I expected. He pulled back, reaching for his shirt, the moment crumbling between us like ash. Go home, Emily, he said, voice rough. Before I forget what mercy feels like. I hesitated, heartbreaking for reasons I didn't understand. Then I turned, leaving him in the silence. A man carved from blood and regret. And the only one who ever made me wish the devil could be saved. The days after the shooting were quieter, but not peaceful. Luciano had locked himself deeper behind closed doors, speaking only through guards and orders. The distance between us was sharper than any wound, deliberate, punishing and cold. I told myself I didn't care, that I'd only stayed because I needed the paycheck. But every time I passed his office and heard his voice, that calm, commanding tone, I felt the ache of everything he didn't say. So when I heard a familiar voice call my name in the lobby, I almost didn't recognize it. Emily, I froze. Standing there, looking just as smug as the day he left, was Ryan. My ex. The man who'd promised to marry me before, disappearing with my savings and half my dignity. He smiled, spreading his arms like the past had never happened. Still the same stubborn beauty. I had to see it to believe it. What are you doing here? I hissed, glancing around. This place isn't for you. He chuckled. Relax. I just wanted to make sure you were safe. Word on the street is your new boss is dangerous. Thought I'd save you before you get caught in something ugly. The word save felt like poison. Save me? You left me with nothing. His grin faltered for a heartbeat. I made mistakes, Em. But I came back to make things right. The Mancinis. He stopped himself, then leaned in closer. Lowering his voice. They're planning something. Rossi isn't who you think he is. Let me help you get out before. Before what? The voice came from behind us, smooth, quiet, and lethal. Luciano. I turned slowly. He stood a few feet away, watching us, every line of his body carved from tension. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, those dark, steady eyes, burned with something dangerous. Mr. Rossi, I started, panic rising. It's not what it looks like. He cut me off, his tone glacial. Then what is it exactly? My employee whispering with a stranger in my lobby? A stranger who smells like Mancini perfume. Ryan stiffened. Careful, Rossi. You don't own everyone she talks to. Luciano's jaw flexed. No, but I decide who stays under my roof. He turned to me. My office. Now. The silence between us was unbearable. When the door shut behind us, I finally spoke. You had no right to. Who is he? Luciano demanded, voice low, dangerous. No one. He's just. No one doesn't show up at my door. No one doesn't smell like my enemy's cologne. My hands curled into fists. You're paranoid. Not everyone lives by your rules. He took a step closer, his shadow swallowing mine. My rules are the only reason you're still breathing. Then maybe I'd rather not be. I shot back. You don't own me, Luciano. You don't get to decide who I talk to. Something flickered in his eyes. Hurt, quickly buried beneath fury. So that's what this is, he said softly. You've been playing me. Feeding them what they want. What? No. I stepped forward, desperate. You're not listening. But he was already done listening. Luciano crossed to the door, yanked it open, and shouted to his men, she's finished here. Send her out. I froze. You're firing me? He didn't look at me. You wanted freedom. Now you have it. The humiliation burned through me, hot and sharp. Everyone in the corridor turned to look. The guards. The secretaries. The vultures waiting for a scandal. I swallowed the lump in my throat, squared my shoulders, and forced the words out. You'll regret this, Rossi. I already do, he said quietly, without meeting my eyes. I didn't cry until I reached the street. Rain blurred the city lights into streaks of gold and red. My reflection in a puddle looked like a stranger, drenched, trembling, furious. I told myself I'd never look back, that I'd survived worse than him before. But the ache in my chest said otherwise. By the time Luciano learned the truth, it was too late. His men had traced Ryan's phone and found the messages. The meeting wasn't coincidence. The Mancinis had sent him to lure me out, to make it look like betrayal. Rossi's curse echoed through the penthouse like thunder. Find her. Now. They searched half the city before one of his men returned. Grim-faced, holding a single piece of evidence, my torn necklace. Found near the docks. Luciano's hand closed around it, knuckles widening. She's gone, his lieutenant said quietly. They took her. Luciano's voice was a whisper, the kind that carried death. Then we burn the world until we get her back. The night she vanished, Naples stopped breathing. Every alley, every port, every blood-soaked corner of the city whispered one truth. Someone had taken what belonged to Luciano Rossi, and that someone was about to learn what hell really looked like. Luciano stood at the center of his war room, rain hammering against the windows. Maps and photos spread across the table like a battlefield. His men argued, voices sharp and desperate, but he barely heard them. They'll kill her if you go in blind. Marco shouted. We can't afford another street war. Luciano slammed his fist against the table, the sound echoing through the room. I don't care about the cost. I want her back. You're talking about trading half the empire, another man warned. The docks, the shipments, our alliances, everything your father built. Let it burn, he said coldly. If it brings her back alive, it's worth it. The room fell silent. No one dared speak after that. For years, Luciano had ruled through fear and logic. But tonight, logic was dead. The only thing left was fury, and the hollow ache that had haunted him since she'd walked out that door. He turned to Marco. Set the meeting with Mancini. The abandoned warehouse reeked of oil and betrayal. Luciano arrived alone, his gun holstered but ready, his expression carved from ice. Across from him stood Rico Mancini, the man who dared to touch Emily's arm at that cursed lunch, and now held her life like a bargaining chip. Rico smiled. You came fast, Rossi. Guess the rumors were true. The devil does have a heart. Luciano's voice was calm, lethal. Where is she? First, the trade. Rico gestured to the briefcase beside him. Half your territory. The docks, the smuggling routes, everything you own south of the river. Sign them over, and you get your little secretary back. Luciano's jaw flexed, but he didn't hesitate. He took the papers, signed his name, and slid them across the table. Now, he said, bring her. Rico's grin faltered. Maybe he'd expected resistance. Maybe he'd wanted a fight. But Luciano Rossi had already decided. He'd rather lose his crown than lose her. Two men dragged her out, Emily, wrists tied, a bruise darkening her cheek. Her clothes were torn, but her eyes, her defiant, furious eyes, were still her own. When she saw him, she froze. Luciano. He stepped forward, killing anyone who stood in his way with a look. Let her go. Rico lifted a hand, pretending innocence. She's all yours, boss. A pleasure doing business. Luciano's men closed in, but before Rico could blink, Luciano grabbed him by the throat and slammed him into the wall. Touch her again, he hissed, voice low and venomous. And I'll send your soul to hell ahead of schedule. He let go, letting the man crumble to the floor. Then he turned to her, untied her wrists with trembling hands. You shouldn't have come, Emily whispered, tears mixing with blood. You gave up everything. He cupped her face, his thumb brushing the bruise on her cheek. I'd trade 1,000 empires for you. Why? She asked, voice breaking. Why would you risk everything? Luciano looked at her, really looked at her, and for once, the devil of Naples didn't look like a monster. He looked like a man who'd finally found something worth bleeding for. Because without you, he said quietly, there's nothing left worth ruling. For a moment, time stopped. Then she kissed him, or maybe he kissed her. It didn't matter. It was all heat and salt and desperation, the taste of gunpowder and forgiveness. Her hands gripped his shoulders, his blood staining her fingers, but she didn't care. He didn't either. The world outside burned, and for the first time, neither of them tried to stop it. When they finally broke apart, his forehead rested against hers, their breaths mingling in the darkness. You're insane, she whispered. He smiled faintly. You make me that way. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, the sound of the empire he'd just sacrificed. But in that moment, Luciano didn't hear them. He had her, and for the first time in his life, that was enough. The war should have ended the night Luciano brought me home. But empires don't forgive mercy. Within 24 hours, half his lieutenants had vanished. The rest whispered in corners, eyes sharp with doubt. They didn't see a devil anymore. They saw a man who'd bled for a woman. And in their world, that was weakness. Luciano knew it. So did I. He stood by the window of his penthouse, watching the city lights flicker like dying embers. The bandage across his shoulder had bled through again, but he didn't seem to notice. They'll come for me soon, he said quietly. My own men. I set a fresh glass of whiskey beside him. Then let them come. His mouth curved into something between a smile and a sigh. You make it sound easy. It is, I said. You saved me. Now I save you. He turned to look at me. Really look at me. You don't owe me that, Tesoro. No, I whispered. But I want to. That night, while he met with the remaining heads of the syndicate, I slipped into the records room, the one he'd always kept locked. I wasn't supposed to be there, but the unease in his voice haunted me. The room smelled of leather and gun oil. Files were stacked neatly on the table, arranged with Luciano's obsessive precision. But one folder lay open and wrong. Too deliberate. Inside were coded ledgers, shipment routes, and communication logs. The last few messages caught my eye, familiar handwriting. Marcos, his right-hand man, the one who had sworn loyalty since they were boys. The messages were simple, devastating. Payment received. Rossi's location confirmed. He'll trade everything for the girl. My stomach turned cold. Marco hadn't just betrayed him. He'd set the entire kidnapping in motion. I didn't think. I ran. The meeting room was chaos when I burst in. Half a dozen men sat around the long table, voices rising in argument. Luciano leaned back in his chair, silent, calculating, until I threw the file onto the table. Read it. Marco's face drained of color. Luciano's gaze didn't move, but the air changed, heavy, lethal. Emily, he said softly, what is this? Proof. I pointed at Marco. He sold you out to the Mancinis. He's the reason I was taken. Luciano rose slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. His voice was calm, but every word was a blade. You betrayed your family. For money. Marco stood, trembling. You were losing control, boss. She made you weak. I did what had to be done to save the empire. Luciano's jaw tightened. You don't save an empire by selling its soul. Marco reached for his gun. Luciano was faster. 2 shots cracked through the room. The first hit Marco's hand. The second shattered the lamp behind him. Silence followed, tense, electric. Luciano holstered his gun, breathing hard. Leave him. Let the others see what loyalty costs. But the others didn't leave. Not yet. One of the older men, Rizzo, stood, face unreadable. You've lost your edge. Rossi. A Don who bleeds for a woman isn't a Don anymore. That was when the gunfire started. The ambush came from all sides, glass shattering. Men shouting, bullets tearing through the walls. Luciano dove for cover, dragging me behind the overturned table. They sold us out, he growled, firing blindly. Everyone. Then we fight. I shouted back. He gave a bitter laugh. You think you can shoot? I reached for his gun, the same one I'd once tried to steal 5 years ago, and aimed. The memory hit me like a spark, a dark alley. A younger me trembling, a man's voice saying, you should have aimed higher. This time I did. A figure charged from the hallway, weapon raised. I fired. Once. He dropped instantly. Luciano froze, eyes wide. You? Go. I said, cocking the gun again. I'll cover you. For the first time since I'd met him, he didn't argue. We fought side by side until the last of them fell. Smoke and silence filled the air, the kind that follows ruin. My hands shook, but not from fear. From adrenaline. From the realization that I wasn't the same woman who walked into his office weeks ago. Luciano lowered his gun and looked at me, something raw flickering behind his gaze. You saved my life. I smiled faintly. Guess we're even now. He stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from my face with a hand still trembling from battle. No, amore mio. His voice cracked on the words. You were never my weakness. His thumb traced the line of my jaw, gentle, reverent. You're my reason. For the first time, the devil of Naples bowed his head, not in defeat, but in surrender. And I realized that love, in his world, was the most dangerous victory of all. Dawn broke over Naples in muted gold, the kind of light that made even the ruins look forgiven. The city was still rebuilding after the war Luciano had started and ended. But inside the Rossi penthouse, it was strangely quiet. No guards, no guns, no orders shouted through half-open doors. Just the faint hum of the city, and the man who once ruled it, standing by the window with his jacket draped over one arm. He looked different now, not softer, but lighter, like a man who'd finally laid down a crown made of knives. It's done, he said when I entered. Marco's dead. The council has chosen a new Don. I froze. Who? Salvatore. His voice was calm, final. He'll take over the docks, the imports, the families. I signed everything over this morning. My heart stuttered. You're stepping down? He nodded. It's time. I built an empire out of blood, Emily. And for what? To lose every piece of myself trying to protect it. He turned to face me, eyes shadowed by exhaustion and something softer. You're free now. You don't owe me anything. I stared at him. The man who'd burned cities, bled for me, saved me, destroyed himself, and felt a sharp ache in my chest. Free. I repeated. You think that's what I want? He blinked, thrown off by the quiet tremor in my voice. You burned down your world for me, I said. Let me build a new one for us. For the first time, his composure cracked. Emily. No. I crossed to him, heart pounding. I've spent my whole life running from power. From danger. But maybe power isn't the problem. Maybe it's what we do with it. He exhaled slowly, eyes tracing my face like he was memorizing it. You'd really trade safety for me? I smiled faintly. You didn't just save my life, Luciano. You showed me how to fight for it. Something in him gave way then. The last wall, the last defense. He reached out, his fingers threading through mine. Rossi imports, he murmured, almost to himself. We could make it legitimate. Real exports, no bribes, no blood. I squeezed his hand. A clean empire. He laughed, a low, disbelieving sound. Never thought I'd hear those words from you. Guess we're both full of surprises. Weeks later, the transformation began. The gunmetal office was stripped bare. No ledgers, no hidden safes. Luciano replaced the bulletproof glass with sunlight, the whiskey decanters with ledgers and invoices. Men in suits gave way to workers in crisp uniforms. Shipments of weapons replaced by crates of imported wine and olive oil. Every morning, he came to work in a plain shirt, sleeves rolled, hair unruly. Every night, he went home with me. And every time I saw him laugh, really laugh, I thought, maybe redemption isn't about erasing the past, but surviving it together. One evening, as the city dimmed under a violet sky, I found him sitting at his desk, an old one, the kind he used to use when his world was darker. A stack of papers lay beside an open drawer. Long day, I asked. He smiled, tired but warm. Just tying up the ghosts. When he left the room, I noticed a folded envelope tucked beneath the ledger. My name written in his precise, deliberate handwriting. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single line, scrawled in black ink. If I ever become the monster again, remind me who I am. Yours. L.R. My throat tightened. I pressed the letter to my chest, the ink smudging slightly beneath my fingers. When he returned, I didn't say anything. I just walked to him, slipped my arms around his waist, and held on. Luciano kissed the top of my head, murmuring against my hair. What would I be without you? I looked up at him, this man who'd been feared by the world but undone by love, and whispered, alive. We stood on the balcony, watching the city that had once been his kingdom stretch out below us. Golden lights flickering against the dark sea. The wind carried the faint sound of church bells, distant and hauntingly beautiful. Luciano's arms circled my waist. My father used to say power was everything, he said quietly. And what do you say? He looked at me, a smile ghosting his lips. Power means nothing without peace. I leaned my head against his shoulder. Then we've already won. Below us, the city lights shimmered, a map of scars and second chances. And for the first time, the devil and the woman who tamed him stood not as ruler and captive, not as sinner and savior, but as equals. Two souls, forged in fire, finally finding their way home.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.